Hey YouTube, Joeboy here. So, One Piece chapter 1064 is out. If you guys haven't checked out that chapter yet, I suggest that you do so because I will be spoiling you. But now that you have, let's begin. It is absolutely insane to me that in the middle of Egghead, we've had not one, but two chapters in a row focused on Blackbeard and Law. Just to be straight up with you guys, like, what are we gonna comp this with? I think that this is straight up unprecedented. Where we're at damn near the start of the arc, and we focus on events away from where we are for an extended period of time, and it's not a flashback. Like, I want to comp with Ace. Ace is somewhat similar, Ace vs. Blackbeard, but that was still in the middle, in the interim between arcs. All of this has me mad nervous. It has me nervous. We were talking in the comments video a couple days ago, right? Like, Law's not gonna die, right? And the only way it would be even feasible in the slightest is if Oda made Blackbeard vs. Law its own entire battle, and here we are 2 chapters in a row. I mean, I think that we're gonna get the whole battle. Still don't think Law's gonna die, but still, this is the circumstances for things to happen. Either way, the longer this stretches out, the more that I think that we should pay attention to what's going on. I mean, you should do that normally, but the longer that it is, the more things that could happen. I'm talking big reveals of one kind or another. So what are our pieces on the board? Well, let's first start off with things related to Egghead. This battle is taking place simultaneously. It would make sense for this battle to in some way tie in to Straw Hats, right? That just intuitively makes sense. We know Vegapunk at some point, probably very soon, is gonna drop some mega secrets about the Devil Fruit. Well, is the Devil Fruits related at all to Blackbeard and or Law? Big yes. Questions such as how Blackbeard has more than one. Questions such as how Blackbeard steals them. Does Vegapunk know how awakening works? And we know that Vegapunk has tried to recreate Devil Fruits, although he considered this experiment a failure with Momonosuke. It is very, very close to just being not a failure, but what about it is a failure, and what about Devil Fruits is hard to recreate. But even more than this is something that has been on my mind for a while. What is Blackbeard? And we just came from an arc where it was essentially confirmed that Kaido was an experiment of the world government. Obviously, that's how Vegapunk got DNA in order to recreate Kaido's Devil Fruit. And we know the same is true with King, Lunarian. We see the fruits of some of this experimentation recently. The Seraphims clearly possess Lunarian DNA. I've thought for a pretty long time that Blackbeard might have been experimented on from when he was a child, and the person who might have experimented on him is Vegapunk. All of this could happen, none of this could happen. I'm just saying that as we cross between Vegapunk, Egghead, and Blackbeard Law, it would make sense for them to be related, and if that is true in any way, buckle yourselves up. But anyway, it's not just the potential here that has me excited, the actual battle itself is just fire. Oda's actually accomplished something here that he's failed to accomplish with Law for 400 chapters, which is explain what his freaking crew does. How do they work? Essentially, since Law's been a part of the story, it's been Law pretty much soloing with the Strats and his crew, whether in the story or not, or just there. Kung Fu Panda does something every now and again, and everybody else is just like, yeah, we're here. But we actually see them in action and function as a team, which was great. I mean, look, Sachi, I think his name is, and Penguin, they can do stuff. Who would have thought? And their abilities, I guess, are useful. It seems kind of niche to me to be underwater experts, but at the same time, against a crew like Blackbeard's, who everyone is Devil Fruit users, there's some advantage to being able to go into the water where they can't. At the same time, you could see some Devil Fruit abilities, such as Aokiji's or Blackbeard's, that can affect probably underwater, so we'll see. But can we take a moment to just appreciate Law's ship? Like, in any normal circumstance or traveling the Grand Line, having a submarine is kind of overpowered, in the same way that the Thousand Sunny is overpowered. Oda really didn't hold back there. I also like how there was a moment in which Law was vulnerable. Van Augur took a shot at him and Jean Bart acted as his shield. Just how that functions, how the roles of the crew, I don't know, I like this for a number of reasons. Also because Jean Bart was a slave in Revujo for so long, taking all this abuse, it just makes sense to me that he's, a defensive type of fighter. But yeah, after all the law slander in the last chapter, not just from me, but from quite a number of people, Oda hammered in here that Law isn't as outclassed as we thought. And a big component of that is just simply his crew doing things, and that was a huge focus in the battle, probably very necessary. At the same time, it still doesn't make too much sense to me for Law to defeat Blackbeard. I don't know. I can't wrap my mind around it. I'm not going to sit here forever trying to justify it. It just doesn't make too much sense to me. I guess it's possible that Law is able to put up enough of a fight that he's able to escape, but a consistent theme with Blackbeard is even when he loses, he gains something. So I'm expecting that, at the very least. And even though Law may be seeming to win this early part of the battle, Oda's also establishing areas in which Blackbeard could grow. We began this chapter with Law using his awakening, which Blackbeard was not prepared for. In fact, he doesn't seem to be all that aware of awakenings, like he hasn't seen them very often or at all, which is kind of surprising. At the same time, his entire crew is Devil Fruit users. So, are we expecting every member of the Blackbeard Pirates to awaken their fruit by the time that they fight the Strats? Because if so, wow. And even if not, right, Blackbeard has to. He has to. And with how Luffy awakened, it was actually a mythical zone. I'm looking at Blackbeard, weird fruit, probably pretty cool. And as a side note here, this just occurred to me just now, but we are expecting Blackbeard's Yami Yami no Mi to be similar to the Gomu Gomu no Mi, right? Like, I think a lot of people are expecting that. I am. So that would change the classification of the Yami Yami no Mi from a Logia to a zone. There's been a theory that Blackbeard's going to have 3 fruits by the time he fights Luffy in-game, because the number 3 is associated strongly with Blackbeard on a number of occasions, including his Jolly Roger 3 Skulls, which, in my opinion, is the biggest evidence. And it's always just been intuitive that if Blackbeard gets 3 fruits, that it would be one of each type: Logia, Paramecia, and Zone. And we've been looking for which Zone fruits Blackbeard could pick up for the 3rd one, since pretty much the dawn of time. But if the Yami Yami no Mi becomes a zone, then are we actually looking for a Logia? This changes the game quite a lot and has me focused on another character that was hyped up in this chapter, Aokiji, or Kuzan. We see in the cover story that it was in fact Kuzan that captured Pudding and is now a member of the Blackbeard Pirates. When I'm looking for Blackbeard's 3rd Devil Fruit, if that ends up happening, I expect the strongest of each. Strongest Paramecia with the Guruguru no Mi, strongest Zone. Yami Yami no Mi is probably up there in terms of in-game Devil Fruits related to the past. And then strongest Logia. It's like things like when Burgess was hunting down the Marimara no Mi. Was that intended for Blackbeard? It could have been. Logias are just very rare in general, but is that the strongest Logia? Definitely not. I mean, we get a straight up comparison in Marineford between the Marimara and Akainu's fruit, and Akainu has the superior version. Or at least he states that, and it ends up that way. So from the Devil Fruits that we actually know, who are the candidates to have the strongest Logia in the story? And that would, be Enel, Aokiji, Akainu, or Kizaru, probably. So it has me thinking about Aokiji. As a member of the Blackbeard Pirates, does anyone buy that he's a straight up Blackbeard pirate? No. Like, nobody buys that. We know who Aokiji is. He has his own agenda and is not a full-blown ally of Blackbeard Pirates, even if they're convinced that that's true. And if they are convinced that's true, then they're idiots. So it could be in-game, right? Aokiji does something against Blackbeard Pirates eventually, but maybe Blackbeard is prepared for it and then kills him and takes his fruit. That's his 3rd fruit. Just on my mind. I know that Aokiji lost to Akainu, so you could say Akainu has the strongest Logia, but, that matchup really favored Akainu. In any normal fight, you can't even touch Aokiji or get near him before you freeze, and right now we have, Haki could overcome Devil Fruit abilities, but still. And the combination of darkness and cold is one that feels very fitting to me. But despite me saying this, I definitely do believe that there's some form of water logia. We argued this recently and it became even more plausible to me when we were introduced to Aramaki and his biome, forest or plant logia devil fruit. To be very clear here, he's not a plant logia. He is the woods fruit, which is similar to, for instance, caribou with the swamp fruit. It made me think that if we do get a water logia, it'll end up being the sea fruit. There's theories that potentially Emu has this devil fruit. Certainly, if there is anything like that, that would be clear-cut the best logia, right? I mean, you would assume so. And maybe that's more fitting. But anyway, back to the chapter. Blackbeard had an interesting line, at least as translated by the fan translation, that I don't know how true it is. Essentially, Blackbeard's coming into this fight, Law's demonstrating abilities he wasn't prepared for. He's like, what the hell is all this? Then Van Augur says this is what happens when you charge in half cock, and then used his warp fruit to sort of save Blackbeard from danger, and then asks him, shall we return to the ship? And Blackbeard says, don't be an idiot, we finish what we start. Which couldn't be any less true. I mean, how many times has Blackbeard not finished what he started? He literally just attacked Ball Hancock. He intended to take her devil fruit and did not finish that. And that's not the only example. Think about Marineford. He came into Marineford, was prepared for a battle, started a giant battle, and then didn't finish it. Or look at him attacking Straw Hat Luffy. I know that this theory is probably less popular than it once was, but a big one back in the day is Blackbeard's multiple personalities. Like there's 3 different versions of Blackbeard. Souls or whatever that take control, and it's just like makes me think that this is one of Blackbeard's alters, because it's just a straight up contradiction. Like the idea that I have in my mind is 3 souls in Blackbeard. I think 3 hearts is another variant that has come up recently. Each of these souls has a distinct personality. You have like scared child, maybe you have an aggressive variant, and then you have a careful variant. But this is another thing which could potentially interrelate Law and Blackbeard with the Strats and Vegapunk, because right now we have Vegapunk with alters, various versions of himself with different traits, so it's another thing to keep your eye on. But then it flips and we actually see Pudding in Blackbeard's jail cell. I guess everybody who doesn't read the spoilers is not going to understand how hot the official translation, just the general consensus of Pudding's words in this chapter, how that's going to be. Because the spoilers bamboozled us all. I want you guys to understand, I was totally prepared to go on a rant this week, but also I wanted to keep it contained and not go overboard with the rant. But essentially the spoilers, which most people read, said that Big Mom died. Pudding said that Big Mom was dead. Oh boy, TCB done averted a crisis. I know that some people are rooting for Big Mom to die simply because they don't like her, but yeah, I mean, if that actually happens, then whew. For her last words to be, don't think me defeated, or don't think me dead, and then to have literally died, sort of in the most anticlimactic way possible, is just not good. But I'll have you know, I came up with some pretty good copage as well. Maybe we'll share that in this video, or whenever Big Mom dies, if that happens. But for a couple days, at least, we're safe. I'm sure that people who actually read the Raws and can read Japanese are going to chime in well before then. The official obviously matters a lot to me. I'm curious as to what the consensus of this dialogue is going to be going forward. I really hope that Big Mom isn't dead. At the same time, I am a man of little faith currently, because it seems as if Oda does want to get rid of Big Mom, or would prefer that. And it's worth noting that while the spoilers were incorrect, perhaps on 2 fronts this past week, the spoilers tend to be accurate. It's obviously little blurbs, but there's no egregious mistakes, or very few of those. So I have the feeling that Pudding's dialogue can be interpreted in multiple ways. You can essentially believe what you want to believe. But as translated by TCB, Pudding says, Mama's gonna make you eat those words if she's still alive. And in the spoilers, they translated it as, if Mom were alive, she would shut you all up. Yeah, see the difference there? If you ask me, based just on the choice of words here, which one makes more sense, I think the spoilers make more sense. It's just very strange for Pudding to bring up whether or not Big Mom is alive. As TCB translated it again, Mama's gonna make you eat those words if she's still alive. Like, why is Pudding saying if she's still alive? And then after this, they said, haha, you realize we're fighting her killer now, right? So again, we're emphasizing here that, strangely, that Big Mom is or could be dead. It just makes more sense to me for it to be more set in stone. Even though the reveal, if Big Mom is dead, is terrible, off screen, it's terrible, right? The whole panel has the feeling of a reveal. Like even the line after this, new eras only happen when the old legends are torn down. This entire panel exists to sort of say that Big Mom is dead and we're fighting her killer. It just seems to be phrased in an ambiguous way. But if it is meant to be ambiguous or a question and less of a conclusion, I wish that we'd gotten one more line from Pudding, something like, there's no way Big Mom is dead, or she won't die that easily, or something to that effect, to make it more clear, like, hey, Schrodinger's Big Mom, is she dead or alive in the box? We don't know. It's just all very awkward. At the same time, if you actually look at Pudding's face, she's not crying or emotional in any way, which in my opinion makes it less likely that Pudding uses definitive language, that she's not saying that Big Mom is dead, because even though Pudding and Big Mom have their issues, I think that the crew cares about their mother, and so this would be new information. To me, Pudding's reaction doesn't quite fit. I wouldn't expect Stoneface. And I also wouldn't expect her to flex all over the Blackbeard Pirates about, well, my mama, you're lucky she just died. So I'm gonna stop torturing you and talking about things that you will know soon. People will chime in, and my guess is that it's ambiguous, and argument can be made either way. But you better believe that I hope that Big Mom is still alive. I still have questions as to how important a role she can play. I think that the Big Mom fatigue is real. There was lots of potential. There's things that we absolutely need. Like, for Big Mom to not have any resolution with Mother Carmel, explanation of the portrait or how she works, all that stuff. I mean, it's just, if it just gets skipped over, right, I think that it confirms that Oda essentially changed his plans in order to speed the story up. That the Big Mom story was taking too long and would take too long to finish. So it was cut. But even if she does come back and some of these story elements are resolved, it's definitely true at this point in time that, it's unlikely that Big Mom will continue to be a main antagonist, and really a lot of the story will focus on her because she's been in the story so long and a lot of people are sick of her. And there's no doubt that that will influence in some way what Oda and his team chooses to do. Either you resolve the things that you need to, or Big Mom overstays her welcome. It feels kind of like a lose-lose scenario. One way or the other, we're not happy. Although this is actually a good spot to throw in my copage. So, again, spoilers came out, confirmed, quote-unquote, that Big Mom had died. So how can we possibly, get some resolution of Big Mom, but she has actually died? Well, one curious thing about Big Mom is that most of Big Mom's own soul no longer resides within her body. She removed great chunks of it with her homies, Prometheus, Zeus, Napoleon, and Hera. I also believe that the black blobs that we see collecting soul at the beginning of Whole Cake Island are also made out of Big Mom's own soul, which would make sense because she has the soul power, so it actually kind of feels like maybe aspects of Big Mom's devil fruit, since they still have her powers. But that remains a mystery. Anyway, if Big Mom actually died in the lava, we see Zeus later. Zeus is still alive. So Big Mom's dead, but her homies remain. A lot of people had issues with this, but this actually is how Gecko Mori explained his own abilities, that if he had not returned the shadows or detached the shadows from his zombies, even if they killed him, they wouldn't return back to their user. So same as Big Mom's, and Gecko Mori and Big Mom's devil fruit seem to be very similar. Big Mom takes soul from people, but if you kill her, the soul does not return back to their original owners. So keep up with me here. You have Big Mom's own soul in vast quantities. There's possibly more of Big Mom outside of her body than inside of her body. You also have the black blobs, which can move souls. So those black blobs still have Big Mom's devil fruit ability, the ability to move souls around. Technically, even if Big Mom dies, doesn't mean it's permanent. That's my copage. And if you want to get really interesting here, Big Mom has removed a large part of her own soul from her body. How did that affect her? So if you take all the homies, including Zeus, perhaps, but all of them, and you put all that soul back into Big Mom's own body, how does that change her? Does she suddenly become more like Olin, with her soul returned? Or can we see the homies fuse together? I mean, we've already seen this. We had Misery, right? Which was a combination of, I think, Napoleon, Hera, and Prometheus. So Big Mom's soul fuses together and then goes into an object, which becomes like Big Mom, but without her body. You know, I'm basically speculating, right, that Nami's wand becomes Big Mom. Shh, let it happen. And this actually isn't, a totally out of random tangent either, because we're talking about splitting souls up, right? Big Mom's own soul goes into the homies, but yet they're different. Reminds me of Vegapunk. So we're bringing up Big Mom now with Pudding, cut with Vegapunk and the Strats. It's like, maybe there's something here. Anyway, the last panel of the Blackbeard Law fight, Blackbeard seems like he's in control. He's in Zihaha mode. And Law looks a little bit shaken. So we'll see how that goes. We then cut to Akainu and Mary Joao, which just feels like a really random cut. I mean, this just seems like over and over again. It's getting repetitive at this point. Cut to Akainu. Oh, there's something that I can't do. But I do feel like every panel is chosen purposefully, whether it be, needed exposition or a joke. Like, they're very careful about what they choose to do. So taking a moment here to pan to Akainu, I think, tells us something, even if we don't immediately understand it. Some thoughts that come to mind is, the thing that Akainu says is, it's so frustrating being Fleet Admiral. I wish that I could do more. Nothing seems to be going our way. We're building Akainu's frustration, which could lead him to do something. We're going somewhere. I think the simplest guess here is Akainu eventually gets fed up and says, screw it, I'm doing it myself. This gets him out of his ivory tower and onto the battlefield. But there's another question. Law and Blackbeard have literally just met up, and somehow Akainu and the world government know that this meeting has taken place. How do they know that? It's just something to easily gloss over, but nobody else is here. Could be that there's some sort of informant to the world government among either Blackbeard's crew or Law's crew. If Aokichi is here, I'm not sure that he is, because we don't see him. But if Aokichi is here, that would be the best guess, you would think. Could be any other member of the Blackbeard Pirates, potentially, just because we don't know them too well. And the other idea is Law. Theory that Law is a member of SWORD. I've also speculated Akainu could be a member of SWORD, even though a lot of people disagree with this fundamentally because they want SWORD to be some sort of good guy organization. But I kind of define SWORD as against the Celestial Dragons, which Akainu still fits. But yeah, I mean, that could be what Oda intends to communicate here is think outside the box here. How does the world government know this? And then we get back to Egghead, and this part of the chapter was just as good as the beginning. I would argue, for my personal taste, it was even better, and that is not a dig at all to the first half of the chapter. This is just the part of One Piece that I love with every fiber of my being. I thought it was really interesting how Bonnie aged up Chopper, Jinbei, Luffy, and herself, or changed the ages of it, and that stopped the Pacifista, which doesn't make too much sense to me. I thought the Pacifista was going after them because they stole clothing, but this seems to suggest that the Pacifista knows who they were, the bounties on the various pirates here instead. So maybe I'm just confused. Actually, looking back at chapter 1063, the Pacifista says, eating a food without permission, theft of clothing. So I think what's going on here is that it knows that these crimes occurred and then associated the crimes with whatever their age was at the time. But I'm definitely hoping for some sort of angle where Bonnie transformed into a child and the Pacifista has some recollection or some memory deep within of his own child. And that's what made him stop. We'll see. Grasping at straws. But then we get some conversation, some exposition about Kuma. Jinbei says, nothing personal, Bonnie, but what I know about Kuma doesn't paint a pretty picture. He was the tyrannical king of Sorbet before he was deposed by the people and forced to become a pirate. When he was eventually caught by the Navy, his ties to the revolutionary came to light, and they gave him a life sentence. Vegapunk took an interest in him due to his physical prowess, so he was offered the opportunity to roam the seas again as a warlord, on the condition that he became a specimen for body modification and cloning. Does that cover it? And then Bonnie replies that there's some things about this that she understands and part of it that she doesn't. She says, I get why he'd choose to be a warlord dog and help them make their clone soldiers, but why would anyone knowingly agree to become a mindless cyborg? Anyone can see it's just as bad as a death sentence. We'll come back to this later. Bonnie then goes on to say, though, that Kuma was no stinking tyrant, and he hated the government. He'd never submit to them. This is one of those things that we've known for a long while. I mean, he was known as Tyrant Kuma, but we've seen Kuma, and I mean, he looks like a gentle soul, right? He carries his Bible around, just seems to have a peaceful nature in general. Doesn't appear like a tyrant at all. Of course, he could be different from his time in Sorbet, but I always called BS on that. And this chapter just seems to confirm that, right? But he was no tyrant. He was framed by the government. There's no doubt in my mind that the government has done this on multiple instances across the entire world. Framed people that they didn't like or didn't submit to their rule or oppose them in any way in order to put their own cronies in charge of various islands. All likely with the in-game plan of essentially forcing islands to join the world government. As a story-relevant example of this, it's also a theory, but I think that this is exactly what happened to the Vinsmoke and the North Blue. You know, the Vinsmoke, evil army, empire, right? They were bad, and so the government came in there, and the people hated them. Like, no, I think that's just as BS as Kuma. So while this isn't a surprise to me, I do think that it's necessary. I do think it's going to tie into the Revolutionary Army, which seems like an eminent faction to play a larger role in the story, to help understand them, how that group came into existence, the things that the world government has been doing and is doing on the low-key and in the underworld for a long while, and you know, this is going somewhere. But going back to Bonnie's confusion, like, she understands, okay, becoming a warlord or allowing yourself to be cloned, that's all fine and good, but why would you allow yourself to be erased? She speculates that he must have been forced to do this. But at the end of the chapter, a theory was confirmed, pretty much the first Vegapunk theory ever, which is that he is a member of the Revolutionary Army. It's essentially confirmed that at least part of Vegapunk, if not Vegapunk himself, is at least associated with the Revolutionary Army because he's calling Dragon. One of the first theories I ever made that blew up on my channel was the Pacifista Order 66 theory. Essentially, Order 66, if you're not aware, is from Star Wars, where the clones turned against the Jedi. The clones had programming. There was essentially a switch that could be flipped that gave control of the clones to Emperor Palpatine. What happened here is that Count Dooku, who was a Sith, had a certain planet make a ton of clones to be given to the Republic. Meanwhile, the Republic is fighting the Separatists. They happen upon this island. They find all these clones that they've apparently ordered, a huge army, and then they utilize them because the clones are awesome. But it turns out to have been a trap, a Trojan horse. The theory is that Vegapunk is a member of the Revolutionary Army, chose Kuma specifically because he was a revolutionary and has designed all of the Pacifista, perhaps all the world government creations, to have the same sort of Order 66 switch. When the time comes, they'll join the Revolutionary Army's side. At the same time, Kuma willingly gave up his free will because it can be returned. Vegapunk designed it so that such a thing was possible. As we sit here now, this theory is looking mighty good. And is it a coincidence or not that we're making the Star Wars One Piece theory, right? That One Piece is inspired by Star Wars, and then during the actual scene, Bonnie pulls out a lightsaber. Just saying. But I can't help but to be interested in Bonnie's role in all of this, because there's a connection between Bonnie and Akainu. Bonnie, obviously, after Kuma was arrested, became a warlord, a pawn of the government. She was captured, and then, there's just a relationship there that has not been spelled out. In addition to this, I always felt like she was being held hostage to keep Kuma in line. But then the scene continues and we get to the other bit of the spoilers, which may have been misleading. And again, we're waiting for the official translation as well as the general consensus of everybody. But this is pretty mad confusing just the same. But Bonnie says, Vegapunk may call himself a scientist, but to me, he's just a murderer. This is fan translation. So Bonnie is talking about Vegapunk. Then she goes on to say, Dad always used to say he was a part of a very special race. You can definitely interpret this to say that Dad always used to say Vegapunk was part of a very special race. But then she goes on to say, but so what? Him, whoever him is, being different, doesn't justify forcing him to be a lab rat. Him in this case is clearly Kuma. So you can interpret this as, Dad always used to say Vegapunk was a part of a very special race, but so what? Vegapunk being different just doesn't justify forcing my father to be a lab rat. And it sure as hell doesn't justify killing him. The spoilers here said that the reveal is that Kuma is a part of a very special race. And you can read this as well. I think that if you ignore the first line about Vegapunk being a murderer, then it's like a pretty much a change in topic here. Well, let's skip over the weeds of language. I think one of the hardest things to comprehend here is that people have thought that maybe Vegapunk is a part of a very special race for a long time. So as this is being said with some of the pronouns being unclear, I think that a lot of people prefer to believe that Bonnie is talking about Vegapunk being of a special race and not Kuma, particularly because the special race for Kuma, is not as intuitive or obvious. That being said, reading this dialogue, context, and all that stuff that we're not going to get into, I do think that the special race person is Kuma and not Vegapunk. So I agree with the spoilers. Not that TCB translation here disagrees with the spoilers, it's just as you read it, it lends itself towards confusion. So I'm going to operate based off of Kuma being the person referred to here, and I have no theories, honestly. Part of the very special race for Kuma, Luffy refers to him as a bear, and he does have a distinct look about him, but a lot of characters in One Piece do, so, what's special about him? I really don't know, and if Bonnie is his child, then she would be the same thing, right? But she looks pretty normal. So I guess we need more? I'm really curious as to what you think. But anyway, from here we get an overhead view of Egghead, and we get a better sense of just what the island is, and it's just glorious, man. It is so awesome. Just waiting for that open world game where you can travel to various islands and recruit your crew and then just explore places like this. It would just be so good. But we see Vegapunk uses Island Cloud, that holds up the Sky Islands. So we bring up that again. I wonder if it's gonna go somewhere. Pyroblowing is one of the most random words Oda's included in the story. So I hope, I still hope that it goes somewhere. But I could literally look at these panels for a really long time. It's just so satisfying. And then we end the chapter with the Vegapunk cliffhanger, speaking with Dragon. The problem with being a genius is that you can see your own future coming too. I think I'll be dead soon. I just wanted you to know about this, Dragon. First thing that comes to mind is whether or not Oda is revealing that Vegapunk has some sort of devil fruit ability. I mean, if he can see his own death coming, why does he think that? He shouldn't know about Lucci and Cyberpole, should he? Or is this incredibly advanced observation hockey? It would be really fitting for Vegapunk to have some ability to see into the future and that affecting his inventions. But he clearly had a reason for calling Dragon, and I think that the reason is that the Straw Hats are here. But we missed that part of the conversation because it happened before we cut in. I don't think that Vegapunk called Dragon exclusively to tell him that he thought that he was going to die. And a question that occurs to me is that now that Luffy is a Yonko, what are Dragon's expectations for him? Is Dragon content with fighting his own battles and letting Luffy be free, or is he going to expect his son to fight with him, now that he's one of the most powerful people in the planet? There's a random thought. I also wonder whether Vegapunk was asking for permission or guidance about what to say or not say to the Straw Hats. That just feels like something that would be important to do with Vegapunk being a revolutionary, how much can he trust Dragon's own son? I think that we pretty well discussed this. You know, is it Vegapunk that's a revolutionary? Is it just number 1 that is a revolutionary? It could go either way, however you want to look at it, but what an incredible way to end the chapter. I'm almost so hyped that I'm drained. But yeah, if you take nothing else from this review, my feeling is that big things are going to happen soon. It feels very climactic. We could continue the battle with Law and Blackbeard, leads to reveals. Also, we're going to have reveals with Vegapunk, and then, you know, whether or not Vegapunk's going to die, I think that maybe they do. Obviously, Cypher Pole's coming here. This is, yeah, man, so far it's been incredible. Anyway, that's pretty much all I had to say today. Obligatory reminder that my book, The Booms, is set for release November 4th, available for pre-order right now. Links in the description as well as pinned in the comments. We're doing big things. Anyway, as always, very curious as to what you guys think. Leave your thoughts in the comment section below, which we might discuss in a comments video this week. Remember to like the video, subscribe, click the bell to be notified, and as always guys, have a wonderful day.